Here is the core issue at stake, I believe. Primitive tribal thinking is opposed to abstract reasoning. It focuses on the particular, the personal, the concrete. It reorients knowledge so as to abandon the powerful processes of integration and differentiation in favor of the narrow perspective of the clan, the caste, or the tribe. It leads ineluctably to epistemological relativism as well as cultural relativism. Moreover, we should note well, and Mises stated it forcefully in Human Action, that the modern rejection of reason actually began as an attack on economics. Quote, "The revolt against reason was directed against another target. It did not aim at the natural sciences, but at economics. The attack against the natural sciences was only the logically necessary outcome of the attack against economics. It was impermissible to dethrone reason in one field only and not to question it in other branches of knowledge also." He, of course, here is referring to that beast he calls polylogism and to its progenitor, Karl Marx. He says further, Marxian polylogism asserts that the logical structure of the mind is different with the members of various social classes. Racial polylogism differs from Marxian polylogism only insofar as it ascribes to each race a peculiar logical structure of mind and maintains that all members of a definite race, no matter what their class affiliation may be, are endowed with this peculiar logical structure. End quote. To question the power of reason is to question the value of the human mind. Once such doubts are raised, abstraction departs through the window. Analysis is made impotent. Education becomes a cluttered attic in which unrelated odd items are piled randomly. Further, as Mises well realized, human reason is coextensive with human action. One virtually cannot conceive of one without the other. Reason, divorced from action, is sterile. Action, undisciplined by reason, is aimless. To shackle the mind is to constrain action, to make action teleologically incompetent. In order to survive and to flourish, man must turn to that one wonderful tool that he does possess, his rational faculty. Political chains may limit a man's actions to a great extent, but no external constraint is so effective in hobbling a man as the philosophical proposition that his mind is not to be trusted. The deep currents of skepticism that have risen to prominence over the past 200 years have in this way gravely damaged the bedrock that underlies economics and further science, technology, and education. As examples of these insidious influences, Mises cites the following: David Hume, the utilitarians, and the American pragmatists. Being concerned about very similar issues, Ayn Rand once wrote of education that it was a by nature theoretical, that is, conceptual. Quote, "The student has to be taught to think, to understand, to integrate, to prove, but that this is precisely what the colleges have renounced, failed in, and defaulted on long ago. What they are teaching today has no relevance to anything, neither to theory, nor practice, nor reality, nor human life." End quote. I doubt that Mises would disagree with that sentiment. I certainly do not. And those of us who are academics have almost all been sad witnesses to one prominent manifestation of the default that was noted by Rand, the proliferation of special additions to the college curriculum. Mandatory multicultural courses, plus whole new programs in women's studies, black studies, gay and lesbian studies, Mexican-American studies, and so forth. 6 decades ago, Mises cautioned against the pernicious effects of polylogism, and now we see that very thing embedded in college mission statements and degree plans. To his everlasting credit, Mises fully comprehended what some free market advocates still have not, namely that the debate over capitalism is not merely about which socioeconomic system will more efficiently produce goods and services, nor about which will accord more closely with consumers' individual preferences. He understood that the debate involved that, but much more besides. He understood that to attack capitalism was to attack civilization itself, to attack the role of reason in man's life, and thus to undermine the value of life itself. As he put it, with his typical candor, quote, present-day collectivists advocate measures which are bound to result finally in general impoverishment, in the disintegration of social cooperation under the principle of the division of labor, and in a return to barbarism. Now, if that wasn't strong enough, and not sufficient perhaps to drive the point home, Mises adds the following crescendo. In fact, it's the pronouncement with which he ends human action. It rests with men whether they will make the proper use of the rich treasure with which economic knowledge provides them, or whether they will leave it unused. But if they fail to take advantage of it and disregard its teachings and warnings, they will not annul economics. They will stamp out society and the human race. Well, where do we stand, given that? As we know, socialism is calculational chaos. Rational appraisement and allocation are eternally elusive. It is a gigantic negative-sum game in which each player quickly grabs a piece of the pie, while all the time the pie shrinks before their very eyes. The warfare-welfare state, the interventionist state, is really no improvement. Each intervention begets yet another intervention. Bureaucracy is the only industry that's guaranteed to experience growth. Each new regulation taxes the private sector, relentlessly shifting resources out of the hands of the productive and into the hands of the unproductive. Capitalism is the only positive sum game in town. I think it's fair to say that the case against capitalism is indefensible. It is smoke and mirrors. It is rooted in envy and in malice. It is fueled by a stunning ignorance of sound economics, which is part and parcel of a broader rejection of reason itself. These anti-capitalists, these new barbarians, will, if they get their way, finally destroy not only capitalism, but also education, science, technology, literature, art, individual rights, prosperity, civilization itself. No, it will not come like an avalanche of snow cascading down some mountainside. It will be, it has been, more like a stream of water, slowly but inexorably eroding the surface of a rock, until eventually the rock simply is no more.